Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode, another podcast with Zenex Sock. Thanks for joining us today. I'm very pleased to have Jason Stradley with us, who's the CIO at Gift of Hope. And of course, with the background that Jason has and his speaker at a lot of shows and conferences and the focus on cybersecurity, I'm very glad that we have an expert in the field that can share insights with us. To start, Jason, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about what you do for Gift of Hope?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jason Stradley. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Gift of Hope, which is an organ procurement organization, one of the 55 across the U.S. I lead the full security program there. I am responsible for all things security. I also delve into privacy, as well as business continuity and disaster recovery. I've been here for about a year and a half, part of that time as a contractor, and then after about 6 months, became a full-time employee.
Yeah. So, Jason, looking at your background, you have a pretty significant history as a CISO, or I believe it's a four-time CISO. And you, I want to start by talking about some of the what you're seeing in the industry as it relates to cybersecurity and healthcare. Obviously, you're in a regulated industry. There's a lot of concerns about HIPAA compliance, governance, data privacy that you mentioned. And let's start the conversation by looking at the trends today. What are you seeing today as it relates to healthcare and cybersecurity?
In healthcare specifically, but in general, cybersecurity, we just mentioned that a minute ago before we went on the air. Uh, Artificial intelligence everywhere, uh, even if it's not really there in some cases. There's some AI add-ons to current to old products that have been around for a long time. They've just used some machine learning to automate some of their own back-end processes, and they kind of put the AI stamp on that. So it's always when you start to talk to a vendor, and they start with the AI, you have to really challenge them to, okay, well, tell me more about your AI capability. Where, did you develop your own large language models for this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And the ones that are not really AI, they kind of fall apart pretty quickly. So I think that's one of the trends. Uh, another trend is also related to AI is that the malicious actors seem to be adopting AI faster than the non-bad actors. And that kind of makes sense when you think about it, because the malicious guys, they don't have governance, they don't have regulations, they don't have procurement processes that they have to adhere to. Somebody makes a decision and they go and do it and figure out how it's done. In the real world, on the good guy side, you have all of that stuff. You can't just get a great idea and run with it. You've got to sell it internally, you've got to get it funded, you have to make sure it's going to pass muster with regulators. You have to, adhere to your procurement practices and make sure that you're spending the right money on the right thing at the right time. So that gap, though, is starting to increase, and it's just going to get worse because there's so much that AI opens up. I mean, it literally is going to be everywhere if it's not there already, within a very short period of time. So I think those are the trends that I'm seeing, the overarching trends. Now, how does that fit into cybersecurity? So best simplest example is phishing. You know, phishing emails. There's nothing new. Phishing campaigns, they've been going on for years. But historically, one of the red flags that you can teach your user community to look for in a phishing email is bad grammar, because nine out of 10 phishing emails come from somebody that's outside the U.S. Whose English is not their primary language. So there's bound to be grammatical errors. Well, now they're using AI tools to create those the context of those emails, and the language is near perfect. So that's not a red flag that you teach it as much anymore. It's, you focus more on the hover over the links, look where it came from. What are they asking you to do? The thing that they're talking about, do you even have an association with that? So, example, not to pick on anybody, but it's a great example. The classic phishing email. Hey, your Netflix account is about to expire. We're going to turn you off. Click here to pay your bill. Well, first thing you should really ask yourself is, hey, do I even have a Netflix account? As opposed to panicking and clicking, and it goes bad from there. So that's really what I see as trends. I mean, and that trend of adopting AI for malicious intent, from anything as simple and non-technical as creating a phishing email, all the way to, complete automation of ransomware tool, from development of the code to creation of the payload, creation of the encryption algorithms, to delivery, to command and control monitoring. There are some actors that have automated most, if not all, of those parts of a ransomware attack to date, and there's going to be more. So
Yeah.
it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Yeah, in fact, I've talked about, there's a sense of priority from a trusted source. Those are the two elements that are used in order to get somebody to take an action and cause, a phishing penetration. If it's a
Yes.
Microsoft Office 365, it comes from Microsoft trusted source, and it says your Office 365 is going to get, terminated or pay. The trusted source, the sense of urgency. They click on a button. Exactly what you've said. We are seeing it, and also deep fakes right now, including voice. So, having said that, Jason, what can one do? You know, assuming that nobody has unlimited budget, right? Every IT organization, everyone has limited budget. So, assuming there's limited budget, what are the type of solutions one can put in to try to eliminate or reduce the risk of these type of attacks?
Boy, that's a good question, and I'm making a stab at it. I may find over the coming months and years that I barked up the wrong tree, but I've come to believe now. I'm a technologist in my roots. I love technology. I love to play with technology. I love to see new things. But when you get into a business setting, it's not playtime. It's, what do I need to do to build the capabilities to protect this organization against the risks that are of highest likelihood to be perpetrated against them. And I've come to come around over the years that my human element is the most important thing I have to invest in, and I have to spend a lot of time there, not just phishing simulation campaigns and the once a year PowerPoint that you got to make everybody go through for security training, but really instill a culture of awareness and asking questions and not believing everything you see right away without some out of band qualification. So we spend a lot of time training users, talking to our leadership, in the hopes that it will trickle down from leadership down into the people that are actually doing the work. That you don't blindly trust anything. If it's coming from the CEO, well, pick up the phone and call and find out, hey, did you really send me this thing that you want me to buy $50,000 worth of gift cards and send them here?
Yeah.
That's the really, you can have all these technical capabilities are great and they help, but if you've got you don't have a culture instilled that people, simple as, oh, I got this email. Yeah, I do have an account at this bank. Let me just take a breath and count to 10 before I do anything. And read it and read it and read it and hover over the link and do all the things that you're supposed to do, and then make a determination. I'm really not sure. Let me call my service desk or my security folks and let them take a look at this and see, is this legit or not? And when you do that, we've got the technology. Most places have the technology to look at an email or something, and look at it and say, nah, that's bogus. That's a fish. Nah, you did the right thing. Thank you. Now we have to develop the same kind of techniques to be able to handle the same kind of request. Hey, I got this video that says it's authentic, and it's giving me this information on how to do this kind of a test, for certain DNA traits, let's say, something that's relevant to my business. I'm not sure if it's legit, and I've called the number that I have, and nobody's answering. So I said, well, that's a flag right there. But let us, I want to develop that capability, whether it be something in house or someplace I can send it to that's trusted. I'll look at a video, listen to a recording, and say, it's 90% likely that this is a fake.
Yeah.
I don't know if as far as I know, there aren't many places outside of high-end government that can do that yet at a reasonable cost. But I think that's where the industry needs to go. And some of the big companies are eventually going to develop, the Fortune 10, Fortune 20 maybe, develop that kind of capability in-house so they can do it very quickly. But, being a company with, 510 people, not likely to buy the solution to have that in-house, but I want to have it as a trusted third party that I can go and say, hey, here's a video on XYZ. It's suspect. Can you help us verify or not? I think that's a really important capability that needs to be made available to the rank and file.
Mm-hmm. If so, the risks, we talked about the risk and what can be done, but if you were to recommend the top 5 tools that any organization must have in place today, what would that be?
Well, not necessarily in priority order, but let me try to run it down. I think first and foremost, given that it's still the number one vector of attack, you need email security, to detect phishing, to interdict phishing, to move the spam, out of the spam noise out of the way. And you need multiple layers of that in order to really knock that stuff down so that your end users are getting a very minimal amount of that stuff that they have an opportunity to act on. I think that's really, really important. Next thing would be some kind of a EDR, XDR, IDR, whatever label you want to call it, and have that fully integrated from your desktop to your cloud, to the extent that you can, to whatever remnants of the data center that you might have left. I think that's incredibly important, and in that have your SIM capability, your intrusion detection capability, your host-based firewall, host-based malware, anti-malware support, and really have that as one of the underpinnings of your security program. Another one would be for those companies, and there aren't too many that aren't anymore, cloud enabled, is really start looking at cloud the same way that you look at your on-premise, configuration management, so cloud security posture management tools and things of that nature. I think the next one, and it's up and coming. It's always been on my mind. I wrote an article about 15 or 16 years ago called "It's the Data Stupid," and it's all about the data. And this is one place where we go back to our artificial intelligence, path. that's a place that is going to fast become. There are already a few products out there, and they're pretty good. They've got to get better to really highly automate data protection, from inventory and tagging to scanning, analysis, and blocking as needed. That's actually on my roadmap, not this year, but probably start looking at that stuff next year, because we've got an awful lot of sensitive data, and not just people's financial data and their home address and PII. We've got people's DNA data. So that's, to me, that's more valuable and more sensitive than somebody's bank account. So so the fifth thing is training capability, training tools. Like we use KnowBe4. I've used them for years. They have a really good product set. They do a really good job with phishing campaigns and training. They've got good backup materials to help reinforce what you train people on. They've got some of them are actually fun to watch, believe it or not. So I think those are probably the five things. And if I sat and thought about it for a few more minutes, I might add a couple. But I mean, those make the cornerstone. Make up the cornerstones of what you need nowadays to have a really good program. In fact, if I've done a lot of M&A work back in my different lives in the industry, and the last place that I was at, we did a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and the first thing that we do once the contract gets signed is go out to every endpoint in that organization and install our IDR, XDR product, so that we've got visibility out to all those endpoints, because that's where most of the troubles are going to be. I think those five are if you've got those five and you've got them done really well and got a good process behind each one of them, you're going to be in reasonably good shape.
It's so interesting, because I didn't know how you were going to answer this question, and we call it essentials. We have an essentials package. It's so interesting that you and I are very much aligned in this approach, because we've got a stack called essentials just to address that. Beyond, and of course there's a lot more layers to cybersecurity, but we call that essentials package. Now, this is a lot of work, a lot of speed. How does that work with compliance? I mean, when you have compliance, you got to do certain things. Regulatory compliance slows things down, whereas technology moves really fast, and there's a natural friction between the two. One is fast, the other one you got to slow down. How do you solve that issue?
Well, I have solved it, and I've never completely solved it, but I've made it better every place I've been. Key to minimizing the friction of compliance is to move your organization towards being compliance ready at any given time. So the analogy is, you've got your car, and your father probably always told you, or I know he told me, says your car should always be ready and maintained well enough that you're comfortable getting into it and taking a cross-country trip on the fly. If it's not, you're not taking care of your car. So by that metaphor, we want to strive to being compliance ready, and that means build the compliance into all your processes. I just spoke a minute ago about tools, but you have to have a good process behind those tools. Part of that is the compliance piece. What's the most difficult thing that people struggle with? And that is the collection and presentation of evidence to support compliance requirements. Well, if in your process, part of that process is to produce and archive that evidence as you go, well, when the auditors come in, all you got to do is package that up and give it to them, as opposed to, oh my God, the auditors are coming next week. It's time for this year's fire drill, and things are changing so much that I don't know if you'll ever completely get out of that fire drill, but you can make the fire drill a lot smaller and a lot more specific. AI is going to change all that, not only from helping to be compliance ready, but it's also going to drive a lot more audit activity.
Yep.
Because, these AI driven tools are coming out so fast. They're getting pushed to get to market so fast. A lot of these companies, they don't have any governance behind it. So where does the governance have to come in? It has to come in at the customer level to make sure that the tools they're putting in their environment are actually safe.
Yeah, and
So
there are tools
it's going
available
to,
to make it. Yeah, there are
yeah,
tools
yeah.
available to make it
So
automated today.
automate it as much as you can. But no matter how much you automate, there's always going to be something that falls outside the automation, something that just happened in the last 2 or 3 months, some new regulation, some new set of requirements that's going to fall outside the automation, at least the first time through. And then maybe after you do it once, then you're able to automate it. There's always going to be that cycle of, okay, we got 95% of this automated, and the other 5% is we're waiting for the auditor to see what they're going to throw at us.
Yeah. So IT leadership. I'm going to touch on that a little bit. When we look at IT in general, in the past, cybersecurity was part of IT, right? But it's no longer that. It's been escalated, and now it's a business issue, and boards get involved. CEO, CFO, they get involved. And that means there has to be a leadership from IT talking to the other executives in the organization to educate, align, and deliver. That's a tall order. It's not easy. Everybody's busy, and they don't want to spend. Well, they don't have enough time to spend to go deep in cybersecurity and the challenges of the cybersecurity, and they're not even technical to have that technical
Mm-hmm.
conversation. So, as a leader, how do you go about building consensus, building a vision and alignment with the other executives in the organization, so you're all going in the same direction, and therefore the budgets will open up because you see that vision shared, because they see that this is needed in order to be a better organization.
Yeah. No, I have been very fortunate in this organization because I've been able to do it very early on. Other places, it's taken me a little bit to get the momentum to be able to do that. But I have a gift of hope. I established what I call here an information security risk council, and it's all the executives from the CEO, COO, the top VPs, top financial people, HR people, administrative people, and we once a quarter we all get in a room together, whether it be virtually or otherwise, and I have an agenda, and those agenda items are typically, there's the usual stuff. Hey, here's the status, here's the metrics and all that kind of stuff, but we have discussion items about areas of risk. So the previous 2 meetings that I had, one of the discussion items was, how are we going to put boundaries and guardrails around the use of generative AI tools in the organization?
Yep.
And I came in and I had, hey, here's some things that I would do if I could just go do them. Here's the pros and cons of each one of those things. And we discussed that in detail, all of those things. There were about a dozen things that I had. And some of them, the result was, yeah, let's go ahead and do that one. Others were, nah, we don't want to do that one yet. And then there were a few, hey, can we let's modify this a little bit to be a little less intrusive or introduce a little less friction into the process than we think it would be if we left it alone. So we ended up with essentially a generative AI acceptable use policy that just got published, and I'm starting to put that through the rest of the organization. But so the result of that is a couple of things. One, executive leadership bought off on it. They not only bought off on it, they were part of the process. So they have ownership. They're not accountable to making it happen or accountable for even bringing the ideas, but they help shape the ideas And because they had a hand in shaping the ideas, there's a sense of ownership now. And now when I go out to put it through the rest of the organization, and somebody in let's say, I'm not going to pick on anybody, somebody in human resources says, well, why do we need to do that? I don't, it's going to make my job harder, this, that, the other thing. Well, I don't have to have the conversation. I can join the conversation, but you know who's going to have the conversation? The leader of human resources, because they were at the table. They helped shape this. So they're going to say, no, we agreed to that. This is why we want to do this. And if they still have questions and the HR leader goes, oh, okay, you're asking a question I'm not really sure about. Let's go get Jason. And then the two of us have a conversation with that person, and it really reinforces it. So that is probably the foundational element that I'm using to leverage the creation of culture here, because I'm not creating the culture. I'm just suggesting, which direction the culture needs to go, and people are grabbing onto it and saying, yeah, we want to do this.
Yeah.
So it's really, really helpful, and that it builds it builds trust, it builds credibility, it builds, like I said, that sense of ownership. And I mean that's what you need, because you said it at the onset of this part of the conversation, that it's a business problem now, and boards are involved, and boards of directors are not only involved, they are accountable in many organizations, especially publicly traded organizations, the SEC ruling. They don't just have a little skin in the game in terms of approving budget. They've got skin in the game if something goes wrong.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So
It's so
I mean that,
interesting.
and we don't have that driving here directly, but it's an indirect thing. Hey, everybody's got a piece of the action here. Everybody's got some level of accountability, and at the board level and executive leadership level, that accountability is, if something goes wrong, we need to be able to say that we looked at this and put these controls in, and they were able to get around those controls by doing something nobody could foresee, or we decided to accept that risk because we did this analysis and we had this conversation and we said, nah, we think we're okay. We think we can live with that, with the controls that are in place. Now, is that a great position to be in? No, but it's a better position to be in than saying, oh, I didn't know anything about that. Oh,
Yeah.
when did that happen? At least you've got some defensibility, and you've got a rationale that, hey, we've got a process. We went through the process, and this is what the business decided. This is not what the guy sitting at the security desk decided. The business decided that.
100%. And I think that, our audience is going to really enjoy this piece of the conversation we just had, because building consensus at the executive level with the executive team is critical as how to move forward, understanding the risks associated with it. Whether you want to eliminate, you can never eliminate 100%, but whether you want to eliminate 98% versus 50%, it's up to you. But you got to know about what the risks are and how to handle them. So thank you for that. Now let's chat a little bit, with a little bit of time that we have left, about supply chain. Now, in any organization, healthcare and otherwise, particularly healthcare, you've got a supply chain of different types of vendors. In healthcare, it could be the hospitals, the doctors, the insurance, and so on and so forth. There's many different ways that people connect, and this supply chain nowadays, because of the AI, is actually becoming more vulnerable, because if you've got somebody down the line with an API that has some kind of a vulnerability and is discovered by the bad actors, it can be used to get in and then go down the food chain to do the damage that you want at your final destination. So what risks do you see today with supply chain? How much of this is high risk given the environment today, given all the services that are delivered in the cloud, and you don't even know where it's coming from? And how do you solve for it?
Well, let's talk about what the first part of that first, because that's a little easier. I have a third party, risk program here that I started. I've vetted about, in the past 6 months, probably 50 or 60 vendors, whether they're new ones or they were up for renewal or whatever the case may be. And, that's great. Okay, they've got a SOC 2, they've got a CISO, they've got these controls in place. That says they do some things. Ultimately, it doesn't really mean that much. And so over the years, I've adopted an attitude that you should just assume right from the get-go that every one of your third parties has been compromised in some way, and have the ability to the best of your ability, monitor those things, whether it be through, having a manual escalation that when, hospital XYZ gets compromised, and it happens all the time, that we find out about it either from, it would be great if it was from the CISO of that hospital system. Doesn't always happen because they're busy doing other things when something happens. But we've got our organization, because of what we do, we've got feet on the ground in every hospital that we interact with. So when something happens, they tell us, hey, such and such hospitals, their email was just compromised. Okay. And what do? We close off communications from that hospital immediately. We accept no email, we accept no connections of any kind until we get some kind of clarity that they had a problem, they found out what the problem was, they eliminated the problem, and they're good to go. So that's really the ultimate, defense, is having that wherewithal to understand what's going on, what is the situation at a given one of your partners, and be able to act quickly when the bad thing happens. I've heard that there's even, and it kind of died down a little bit, but if you go back a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, there was a big push for, well, we've got a third party requirement, we want a fourth party requirement, which is the third party of the third party. So in other words, if I do business with company A and company A does business with company B, I have to vet both A and B. And I just said, no, this is madness. Where is it going to end? Because that's just another cottage industry that wants to spring up to cash in on the fear and paranoia. So I fought that, because there were in a couple of one organization I was in, they got sold the bill of goods. Oh, we got to do this. I'm like, no, we don't have to do this, and we're not doing this because it's a waste of time and money. I'd rather spend more money training my people to know what to look for than to invest in yet another tool that looks at the vendors of my vendor. So
Jason, I'd like to wrap up this podcast with one more question, and that's issue of trust. Trust in the ecosystem, patients, providers, executive team, staff, third party. Trust is not about a couple of people talking. Trust is about knowing that your patients are getting the right information at the right time, and it's also secure. Whether it's HIPAA or other compliance requirements. But more importantly, the feel that the organization is standing behind this, and we established that trust. Because at the end of at the end of the day, people would like to work with the organizations that have trust with. So could you touch on that, and how does that play out from your experience in different organizations and your current position? How does that work for you?
well, it's been a pretty much a lifelong learning experience on how to do that. But I think I'm starting to get it. And you've actually talked about, I see trust as breaking it into two different buckets. One bucket is the trust with executive leadership, your board, your partners, your customers, and all of those things. And then there's the other bucket is your internal constituents, most importantly, your staff. So let me talk about the first bucket first, because it's actually a little easier to talk about, and probably a little harder to do. The foundational building block for me of trust is credibility. in that you say you're going to do something, you do it. There's something that's amiss. You say, hey, there is something that is amiss. Now, internally with your leadership and your executives, you can be pretty open about it. When you start to go outside, you have to be able to say those things in a way that doesn't get your organization in trouble. So that's an art form unto itself. But if you can accomplish that, which I've gotten reasonably good at that, you start to build credibility when you say, I'm going to deliver X on such and such a day. I'm going to deliver this connectivity to you, Mr. Partner, on such and such a day. And you do, and it works. You start to build credibility, and the more credibility you have, the more trust that you have from those folks. So again, it's a little easier to explain. It's a little harder to do. In terms of staff, I've adopted a really two mantras above all. There are other things, but these two I really stress. And the first one is that the team gets the credit and I get the blame. So when something goes really well, it was the team. They did X, Y, Z. When something goes off the rails, I go, it went off the rails. It was this, and this, and that was my fault. Easy. Okay. The other thing is you need to instill the idea with your staff that it's okay to make a mistake. Okay. As long as the mistake is made in good faith and it's within the boundaries of what we talked about. Hey, this is the direction we're going in. So you're making a best effort to achieve the goals that we set, and you made a mistake. Okay, fine. I don't think it's you can't learn if you don't make mistakes. I mean, my best learning experiences have been from mistakes.
I agree.
So you tell people it's okay to make a mistake. If you make a mistake, I got your back. Now, it's great to say that. The proof of the pudding is when the mistake is made and you actually have somebody's back. When somebody made a mistake and somebody else in the organization is trying to come after them and gain points or whatever advantage they're trying to get within the organization by saying, oh, you made this mistake and it was this and this and this and this. That's where the proof of the pudding really comes out, when you say, hey, you make a mistake, I've got your back, and when the mistake is actually made, I got their back. And the first time that happens, you see like a light go, like a halo across your whole team, that, hey, this guy just wasn't feeding us a line. We know he's got our back. And when that happens, you achieve trust. You get more innovation. You get more ideas on how to do things, and you get more productivity than almost any other thing you can do, other than promoting people and give them lots of money and all that kind of stuff, which you can't always do. You try to take care of people that do a good job when you can, but those things notwithstanding, establishing that trust through those two things, I've seen as the most effective things that I can do to enhance, overall productivity, innovation, and even retention, because people like working for a boss that they know has their back. I mean, there's really nothing like it. So, hope that answered your question.
Oh, you did, absolutely did, and I'm totally aligned with what you said, and I wanted to thank you for great insight that you provided for the audience today. Lots of details actually that make sense, that people can from this podcast take and execute. And I wanted to thank you for your participation and helping our audience learn from your experience. After all, listening to somebody who's been in the industry for such a long time and have seen a lot of it, provides a roadmap for the others who are trying to do the same. So thank you so very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I really enjoyed it, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
Take care.